Guest is live.
We are live.
All right.
We are live. Hello. We're definitely live now. And yeah, we'll be joined by Russ in a moment. And let's see, there's going to be a whole nother. Every time we do this now, there's going to be a note. Google Hangouts are going away, so we got to figure that out at some point. Damn Google.
Yeah, but there's something else is replacing it.
Yeah. Is this? Here's Russ.
Hey,
hello, Russ.
Sorry about that. I had no idea you were trying to get me.
Using my new microphone today. I'm all excited about this. I bought this microphone just real quick. I bought this microphone a long time ago, and everyone said it's a great podcasting microphone. It was driving me crazy because it didn't work. And then I found out someone said, "Oh yeah, you have to put that through a mic booster box like this. And if you put it through that, it'll work great." So now I'm really happy. Anyway, all right. So everybody's been traveling. Everybody's back. Good to see everybody back.
Mm-hmm.
All three of you guys were in Vancouver. How was it? You guys enjoy it?
Great. Always
great.
Vancouver was nice. Vancouver was really nice. I liked the weather. Maybe it was a little cold for other people, but it was my type of weather, so I was fine with it. I just have to say though, the border patrol at the U.S.-Canadian border. I'm getting feedback there.
Yeah, we're getting some feedback.
Yeah, I was trying to get into the chat room. Was the problem?
We're good. I think.
Just keep trying. Go.
Okay. Russ and I decided to fly to Seattle and take the bus up to Vancouver, and there it was going there. It was fine. It fell out of form and no problems. Got through in about 15 minutes and got to Vancouver, and our stay in Vancouver was pretty great. But on the way back, same thing, fill a form, and the U.S. Border Patrol apparently has been left shorthanded on the Canadian-U.S. border because it took us over 2 hours to get through. And let's just say this. When you check off everything that you don't have anything to declare, and you have a Bell Dutch dill pickle potato chips, and they consider that food that needs to be declared.
I declare.
Something's wrong because I have it in my bag. I tell the guy, I declare no, but I said I checked no for food. He says, well, I don't have any vegetables. I have a bag of potato chips. The guy says, well, I guess you better check the yes in the food box then. Yeah. I'm like, oh my god. So I mean that plus flying.
Well, actually, hold on, Mike. But it was worse for me. I had no food. I had a bag with remnants of food, no actual food, just plastic. And he said I needed to check food for that.
Oh, man.
That's weird.
I'm surprised they didn't ask Russ to go into another room and have a stomach pump so they could inspect his turkey dinty that he was eating.
Yeah.
What were you eating?
A turkey dinty. It turns out it's the same as like a Lunchable.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, on that note,
that plus the fact that I flew a 6-hour red eye from Seattle to New York with an 18-month-old toddler who would not go to sleep, and that just made the trip wonderful. But other than the draft itself.
And now, obviously, you're living out of your car again, which is
like a hobo.
All right, ready? Here we go.
Look who I work for.
Oh man! Whoa! Wow! Yeah. Jesus!
It was a joke.
Well played, Mike. Well played. All right, here we go. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, June 25th, 2019.
I'm hobo Michael Lagello.
Oh, boy.
So's your microphone.
Yeah. You have to log out and log back in, Mike. You're a little fuzzy.
I'm Anthony Mangione from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. And you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we haven't talked since the draft, so we have a lot of little things to get into here, for sure. And then Mike's going to try to figure out how to log out and log back in the meantime. All right, so I think we have to start first and foremost. We have to start right off the bat with this PK Subban trade. I know you may have discussed it yesterday, right? Or you guys didn't do a show. We didn't do a show.
No, we didn't do a show.
Yeah.
I'm totally confused. I'm sorry. It's Tuesday. Yeah, we didn't do one yesterday. We were all traveling. All right. So anyway, yes. So let's now that Mike's gone, let's talk about him. I'm just kidding. He's still there. All right. So
Why did Mike pick on?
let's start there. Okay. So we'd heard rumors about PK possibly moving. One thing you got to give it, like David Poile, of all of the GMs, when you meet him in person, when you talk to him, he's like the most. I always say he's like the Leonard Nimoy of GMs. You know, like he is very much like that. His personality is very logical. You know, and everything is, and he even looks like a Vulcan. You know, he could just be.
No, his ears aren't pointy.
No, not pointy, but he has that Vulcan-esque type thing to him. And,
I'm not going to say a word because I know he listens to the show, and
I know.
And,
I love him. I love him dearly, and he's such an interesting, mysterious guy, who seems like he would be so conservative, like has been a GM in the state of Tennessee for a very long time, and yet, like, give the guy credit. He has balls of steel. Like, he never is worried about making a trade. Like, he will move PK Subban. He moved Shea Weber. He moves out. Other guys. He's moved out. To get Ryan Johansson, he'll move Shea Weber, he'll move PK Subban, and not even think twice about it. It feels like just like he's just not afraid of anything. I mean, part of that, it has to be like a GM who's had job security for a very long time and knows he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's a big part.
Which helps, right? But at the same time, when he makes these moves, he tends to be pretty good. I mean, pretty good about these moves. Like this. I think that he made a great trade here, and I also think it's a great trade for New Jersey. I think it's one of those things that works for both teams. I think
so too. I think the most underrated part of the trade is when everybody was sort of slamming David Poile is Jeremy Davies is a heck of a defenseman. I've been covering him for 4 years, and I found out on the sly that Shiro really likes him to the point where he really didn't want to give him up, but if you're going to get PK Subban, you got to give up something. And look, Santini's an NHL average to below average defenseman. That's fine.
He's a 5. He's a 5 at this level.
But I think what Davies can do is similar to what Will Butcher did. And somewhere between 30 and 40 points. I think he's capable of that, and he might even start this year. I give credit to Jeff Keelty. I always give credit to Jeff Keelty. He does such a good job with young players, developing scouting and otherwise, that that whole staff is on it. And so good for them to get somebody that Devils fans didn't even really know about or know enough about, so they said, this is a total steal.
Yeah.
Well, the one – go ahead, Anthony.
And the fascinating part also as well, again, you get the 2 second-round picks out of the deal as well, both in 2019. And then the humorous part to me, from my perspective in Philadelphia, was that they used the Flyers acquired that second-round pick as the Devils moved back, so the Flyers can move up to get Bobby Brink. So it was fascinating just kind of see how the trade kind of spiderwebs its way around.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, really, and it's funny because when they got that pick, they just made that trade, and they you guys were at the draft, but on television they panned to the Predators table, and you could tell like the Predators just minutes ago had traded PK Subban. So you're thinking about like the way this has the. I mean, obviously they knew they were talking about it for a while, and they finally made a decision. And that's a big decision, like by any stretch of the man. It's a big PR decision, and it felt like to me they just weren't ready, like emotionally, to make this pick. Like, just looking at them, they were just like, fine, let's just move this to the Flyers. We'll get a couple picks. We'll make people call it a day. I mean, because it just felt like, literally there was like 7 or 8 minutes, I think, between them. It was just so.
A few times that they were delayed, I think, Nashville on picks, I think, during the draft, right, Russ?
Yeah.
Well,
at least a couple times where they got close.
Well, no. Yeah. Nashville in the 7th round took a 5-minute timeout, and everybody was getting on their page.
That was one of the circumstances where they were.
I don't get a
circumstances where it happened.
Out there in the 7th round of an NHL draft.
Yeah, they booed them. They got booed.
Of course they did. I mean, there's not.
I gotta say something here though, because like Matthew in the chat room is like, well, if you count Ryan Suter and all these guys, this is what they got in return. You know what? To a franchise that doesn't draft well, it might be troubling. To a franchise that has Dante Fabro who could step right in, it's not that big a deal.
To a
No.
franchise
Right, and
stocked half the league with defensemen. Put it that way.
Right.
right, and this,
All over the place.
and this is the thing, and we've said this on the show for 2 months. This trade was going to go down because they want to sign Roman Josi to an extension. They took little back in salary. I think Santini's making a little over $1 million, and Davies is on his entry level deal. This deal was made and facilitated completely to pay Josi. And the thing is, the Devils were not the only team that were interested in Subban. Before the draft, when Anthony and I and Peter were on the floor looking at who was talking to who, Kyle Dubas and David Poile had a long discussion for like 10 to 15 minutes. And it was reported afterward that Bob McKenzie and a few other people reported that the Leafs were in on Subban, but the problem is that the Leafs were only prepared to take Subban as a $6 million defenseman, meaning that they would have to retain $3 million. Mm-hmm. And the money was the most important thing. They did not get as good a return and it was a decent return, but they did not get as good a return as they could have gotten because of the $9 million salary that Subban is making. And I'll tell you, we'll talk about the deal that was made yesterday and the one that was made or on the weekend and the one that was made today. The NBA style deal is here in the NHL because there are deals being made where teams are getting robbed blind. But it's all for cap reasons.
But it also the key thing is always we have to wait at least maybe a few weeks in the circumstance, because we can say it's also we could say it's Josi, but it very well could be Nashville. It could be very well going after Matt Duchene. We know Matt Duchene is going to be out meeting with Poile and his staff this week at some point. So the money, if that money means that they could both make sure they have their cornerstone bedrock defenseman in Roman Josi and be in play for Matt Duchene to continue to strengthen the center position, then in many ways that's what we have to kind of wait for to see if that occurs.
I mean, I was told flat out by my sources in Nashville that Duchene is on their radar, but is like third, fourth, or fifth on their radar to what they want to do. So, and I don't think, and it was, I mean, everybody wants, and we all do this, and Matt Duchene, seemingly wants to play in Nashville. He's a musician. There's all that stuff, a lot of that, but there's also other stuff that plays in. There's other, they have scouting reports on Duchene as a locker room presence, different things like that, different things that they want, and there's all different sorts of stuff going on that I've heard that mean that lean the Predators towards not signing Matt Duchene, and more than signing him. But I do believe, and I also along those lines, I think that they are definitely talking to the Leafs about something. And they have been talking to the Leafs about something, but they haven't been talking to the Leafs about Subban, which is pretty funny because talking to my sources there, they're like, yeah, the Leafs really never had. I mean, what everybody's saying there, the Leafs he'd have to be a $6 million defenseman, all that stuff. I don't even think it got to that point in the discussions because the Predators knew, first of all, they made it pretty well known that they weren't going to keep much cap space, if any, before even. So it's pointless to even make that deal. So, but I think the fact the Leafs and the Leafs and Predators were obviously talking. I mean, you guys saw them talking even on the floor. The fact that they were talking, I think, was more about the next phase after Subban than it was about Subban because, I've heard Nylander is very, very much in their play. Is something that somebody that they very much like, and I think that's kind of the guy they're targeting.
And that may very well be the case, Zach. But the thing is, I doubt now that after trading Subban, now you've got Josi, you've got Ekholm, you've got Ellis, you've got Fabro probably as your top four. I can't see them, unless it's a 2-for-2 type of deal with like Zaitsev involved, them trading one of their defensemen. I don't see them trading Ryan Ellis or trading Josi or.
It's possible they do, but they also, I mean, because they do obviously Fabry they have other guys they like too, and they could sign another defenseman in in free agency. There's other ways they could go there. It depends. It really depends what Toronto is looking for out of Nylander besides just the cap relief, which is a big thing still for the Leafs. So
no, I mean if they're trading a Nylander or they're trading a Kadri, they're trading for a top four defenseman. That I think that goes without saying. And I know that
defenseman, like a top four, reasonable defenseman, though, right? That's what I mean. You can't, because they still need money. They still need to get the money together.
Well, a top four defenseman who you have cost certainty for term. It's like, again, like an Ellis who just signed an extension is in the first year of his deal. They know how much he costs. It's one thing to trade that. It's another thing to trade for somebody who, say, is an RFA in a year and you don't know how much it's going to cost. There's cost certainty. And that was the whole thing with Brett Pesce. There was cost certainty about trading for him because you know what he's going to make for the next 5 years. Toronto can't trade cost certainty in Nylander for something that could cost them more later on.
Right, which is a lot of the Gossespierre talk. I think is cost certainty as well. Now, whether or not that's the guy they want to go for or not, that's another one who's cost certainty. But let's talk about and before we can move on to the other stuff, let's also talk about the other big trade, which is the Patrick Marleau trade, which happens, of course, tied into it as well. And this, I'm so mad at myself for this because you talk to all these sources, you talk to all these people, and yet if I was just forced by myself in solitary, I would have figured out that this is exactly what was going to happen because the history of Patrick Marleau with San Jose is so strong and especially with his wife in that area. And so I had heard, we heard his wife had already moved back there. My wife's best friends, try to follow this. My wife's best friend lives out there and her son is on a team with Patrick Marleau, one of Patrick Marleau's kids. And so she is a hockey mom along with Patrick Marleau's wife. So they're friends. And so she's seen her around. So she's like, yeah, she's moved back. And we all knew that was the case. For the longest time, Marleau wouldn't leave San Jose because he really is all about being in family. He is all about being. So the second she moves home, we should have freaking realized that he was absolutely 100% going to go back to San Jose. I'm so mad at myself for not saying for all these other paths that my brain took because I talked to people about the Kings and different
But the missing step that I think everybody overlooked, Dak, is the fact, and it only came to be in the last few days before the trade happened, is that it would be a buyout. So it would be a Brooks Orpik type situation where it gets bought out by a team that he's traded to and then goes to San Jose.
Obvious, because that's the only way to get him back to San Jose because San Jose can only take him back without having to pay him a lot. And so that has to go through a buyout. So either the Leafs have to buy him out, which they can't afford to do because they're trying to get rid of all the cap space, or the Leafs are going to do their thing, which they did, and it was I think a smart move, although a lot to give up for someone to just do this. The first round draft pick for sure is an enormous amount, but they did it, and at the end of the day, I guess the question was Patrick Marleau worth it for everything that they did?
I never quite understood. Mike, did you get in terms of the exact? I don't know why I never got it. The exact condition on that pick.
If it's a top 10, it moves to 2021.
Thank you.
So
it was lottery protection. You did say that it was lottery protection.
Yeah, it's not completely lottery protected because
11, 13, yeah.
Right. But to your point, Eck, in this league now, cap space is extremely expensive, and my first reaction to this deal is that not that they got taken to the cleaners, but they paid a hefty price for Lou Lamoriello's. And remember, it was Lou that signed Marleau. It was Lou that signed Zaitsev. Dubas is cleaning up some, and Lou did a lot of positive things in Toronto, but two of his biggest mistakes was the third year on Marleau, and you can say that he wouldn't have gotten him without the third year, and that's probably true. But the third year on Marleau and the 7-year deal to Zaitsev, and they paid a first-round pick in 2020 to get rid of that third year, and you knew that when Dubas came out and said, well, maybe Patrick Marleau is going to be back, you knew that it was sort of a bluff. It was completely a bluff, that they were just looking for a deal that they didn't have to give up a premium draft pick, but that was the price that they had to pay. And if you believe the reports that came out probably hours after they traded Marleau, they've pretty much got Kapanen and Janssen locked up on extended bridge deals.
Right.
So they essentially flipped the money for Marleau and turned it into long-term 3- and 4-year deals for Janssen and Kapanen, and that gives them some security in case there is a holdout with Marner, or in case they have to trade Nylander, which I think that they're still going to do.
Yeah, and that I think you're right about all that stuff. So moving on then from there, the other big trade, of course, is the Miller trade in Vancouver, right? So then that trade happens. JT Miller to Vancouver, Russ. What did you think of this deal?
Well, JT Miller is on the downslide. He is. Doesn't matter about his age. He's been on the downslide for a couple of years now. He's a guy with just inconsistent play. There are flashes out there where JT Miller skates well. He's physical. He'll have shifts in a game where he'll just kill the opposition. He'll have 2 goals in the game, and then there'll be like 5-6 games, and JT Miller won't do much. I mean, at least he's at times hard to play against, but his salary, I always felt from day one, they just gave him way too much money. So in a way, they hurt him by giving him too big a salary, because then it now, limits him as he gets traded. So I don't know. I'm not sure if you're getting more than 40 points, 45 points out of JT Miller. So, it's probably better that Tampa moved him at this point.
Yeah, but this is the thing I thought was ironic. Tampa was in a position where they had to salary dump like Toronto. Now, there were different scenarios, but Miller basically was a salary dump. In that deal, they got a first-round pick. So they were doing a salary dump, and they had an asset who gives Vancouver cost certainty for 4 years at $5.25 million. And I'm sure Vancouver is hoping that Russ is wrong and that he's not done. But if he is, then it's a terrible, terrible deal for the
He's not done, but you don't hear what I said. I mean, he's just
you need to have reasonable expectations for what Miller's going to be able to provide you.
Right,
exactly. I mean, if he's a 45-point player, I think Vancouver will be happy. I don't know if that's worth $5.25 million, but
that's the other argument.
But it's production. Right. It's production at the minimum, and it justifies the deal in some.
Yeah. And he's got he's been around a winning team in Toronto and Tampa. I mean, he can bring stuff there. Not in Toronto, obviously, but in Tampa, he can bring that winning attitude to them. So the next thing I wanted to get into too before Anthony has to check out here, and because Anthony and Russ, you guys were at the Flyers thing today.
Yep.
And I think the Flyers have been, one person on Twitter tweeted out the other day, you don't have to make a trade, Flyers, every single day. But it seems like the Flyers want to make a trade every single day right now.
Chuck Fletcher's making up for lost time, obviously.
He's wheeling and dealing and making a lot of moves every move that people seem to be questioning in some way, shape, or form. And it's individually, each move is kind of strange. I wrote the other day, and people ripped me about it, but I still believe that collectively they make sense, because what they're trying to do is they are trying to obviously jump on this window of opportunity that they see within the division, where a lot of the younger teams are going to be really good in 3 to 5 years, and a lot of the better teams right now in Pittsburgh and Washington are sort of falling off a little bit, and they're in the middle there.
And it lines up again with the current core of Giroux, Voracek, who are in that window right now, where they are in the primes of towards the end of the primes of their careers, where they're trying to make additions without losing too much. And so far, again, the 2 roster players that they've lost in all this wheeling and dealing are Radko Gudas and Ryan Hartman. And in this circumstance, you've added 2 defensemen, both of whom their contracts will be closing fairly soon. So it is you're right in that respect, that it's within that 3-year window. It's just obviously the Hayes contract in this case, which obviously I got so many questions about.
Big one.
Yeah, I'm going to run it to Steve Dangle in Vancouver, and he was the first word out of his mouth is, "What's up with the Hayes deal?" We had a long conversation on that, and it was basically, again, that was the price of business in this circumstance for Philadelphia.
Someone put it really well to me that they said that Alain Vigneault's honeymoon present from the Flyers.
That's what I called it. I called him his wedding. This was his wedding gift.
You the one who said that, actually.
Yeah, everything they got, everything they bought, everything was high, right? So
yes,
they're eating up cap space. The biggest thing that I worry about is you've got this window, like Anthony says, and he's right about it. You're all putting it on the back of a 20-year-old goalie, though. That's what's happened.
And that's where the goaltender that they acquire is going to be extremely important in terms of who they get into backup. Because again, we can't. Whether you want to look at last year as a perfect storm with the goalie injuries for Philadelphia, and in many ways it was. It's still something you have to. It's still something you have to protect against. You need to have someone, especially with Carter Hart going into his second year, as strong as he is mentally. It's still a hefty load. It's still going to need that.
I have to say that there is not one move that Fletcher has done that there's not one aspect that I don't like. Hayes is a fine player, but they paid him too much.
No, you actually have too many double negatives. You hate all these deals, Mike, right? That's what you're.
No. I'm like, okay, I think Hayes is a good player, but would I sign him for 7.14 for 7 years? Not a chance in hell.
Yeah.
Is Justin Braun okay? Decent defenseman, but I think he's making a little too much. I think the Hartman for Pitlick deal is ridiculous.
Well, that's basically in this circumstance. You're shifting off an RFA in this circumstance for Pitlick, who's going to be a UFA. And again, you do have other younger players in system that could potentially move into the spot that Hartman's going to be in. And again, to X's point before that, he's mentioned the fact that it illustrates the fact that Philadelphia was never in love with Ryan Hartman.
They didn't like.
Okay, well, two things. Hold on. Two things on that. I mean, Hartman only played 19 games. He had 6 points. That point production will be better than what Pitlick does this year.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. Which is going to be whoever's going to be put into that third line right wing role, whether it's a young player like Morgan Frost, which I don't think it will be, or somebody that they acquired. That next move, those next 2 moves, other than the RFAs, which is the backup goalie and who they got to figure out who they're going to put in on third line right wing. Because Hartman, at least, you could have potentially slotted him up to third line right wing based on talent. Now Pitlick is exclusively a fourth liner. So that's what we figured out.
And the biggest miscalculation of them all was signing Sanheim to a 2-year deal. Because I'm sorry, you get that guy locked up long term.
Unless you're trying to get, you have an extremely complicated deal with Ivan Provorov that you're trying to figure out right now. That will most certainly be in the 7 to 8 year range. It's going to be complicated. It's going to take a while, and that's the priority that they put on that. And then, is it kicking the can down the road for a couple years on Sanheim? Yes, but at least they'll know at least a couple more years in. Some of those contracts come off the books. The Niskanen contract comes off the books at that point. So that's money that they can lose there in that circumstance. Braun will already be potentially gone. He's only got a year left on his deal. So the money is there. You have to follow the direction of where you're going with this.
I do want to tell one more cautionary tale, though. The Minnesota Wild were in this similar position, and they rushed Luke Cunnin. Now, he's a center, but again, rushing young players is rushing young players. And they might rush one of those kids into the wing spot, and they may get similar low production and then sort of slow down their progress, because Luke Cunnin's progress at 21 is slower than it should be.
Yeah, that's a really good. I mean, I think what they did is they addressed. I mean, they've been trying their best to address 2 major flaws that every Flyers fan or anybody who watched the Flyers last year would note, and that was the beginnings and endings of games. Right, like the Flyers' beginnings of games were horrible. They came out and they were always flat. I think that's where they hire all these badass coaches who are really in your face guys to get that team fired up from the beginning of the game, and then the end of the game. They didn't really have, when the other team would pull their goalie, the Flyers were scored on, I think, as much as anyone else. And because they really didn't have those they would put the shutdown defenseman out there, like a Niskanen or a Braun, 2 guys who have experience in that situation who can actually help. That's where they will use those guys, because the younger guys like Provorov was okay at that, but this is where you couldn't put Gostisbehere, and these other guys. It's a really tough spot to trust a young goalie with a young defense when the other team has their 6 best players on the ice trying to tie the game. That they ran into that time and time again, and they got scored.
They got their noses bloodied a lot. They
really did, and I think that what they did is they said, okay. And when Gudas was out of the lineup, you really saw it that they didn't have anybody to play back there in that situation, and it became a real problem. So now they replaced Gudas with 2 guys who are probably both maybe slightly better defensively.
Different tools, I would say. Braun probably in this circumstance carries a little more of the Gudas-esque physicality standpoint, but a guy like Niskanen in this case, as long as he's the Niskanen of a couple years ago and not last year, is a cool customer under pressure. And that would help certainly with a guy like with a defenseman like Ivan Provorov. That's the kind of partner that he needs.
Very much so, and I think that they needed experience. There's nothing like NHL experience on defense. You just can't. A guy might not be as talented, but you got to have experience. The times to just run into that, right? So that's what they ran into. I mean, now as far as the draft goes, with the fact that they passed on Caulfield twice, Russ. A lot of people are saying that if he becomes a stellar player, like they passed on DeBrincat. And he became now. If they passed on him once, they actually passed on Caulfield twice.
I would never have done it. This is the way I look at it. The Flyers draft was good. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
But no one's going to say it was great until you find out what Caulfield does and some of the kids at the end of it.
And you got to see if because basically, let's face it, at the end of the day, getting that score would precipitated them moving up a second and a third round pick to get Brink. So now you're invariably going to have that comparison for years from now between Brink and Caulfield.
Now, the two things I think that are really interesting about it is people really are concerned that Caulfield is just a goal scorer. He is not. He's fast.
Yeah.
He defends. His defense started getting better this year. He is strong. Like, he did 16 pull-ups. I mean, people are looking at worried about him like he's going to fall apart the minute he gets hit. None of those things are going to happen. The other thing is, I honestly think, and I still think it, and I wrote an article 2 months ago, and it got one pick short. I do think if Podkolzin was there, they would have taken him anyhow. I think that was their target. I really do.
Yeah.
I think it's fair. I think if Podkolzin was there, there's a good chance they sit at 11 and just take him. I actually agree with that. I know we discussed the fact that they had conversations with the Combine in Buffalo. So, if he was there, that's possible. They might have pulled the trigger.
Bowlby, right? Minnesota took right before them that they also liked. There was rumors that was who they were. Was it Bowlby?
Bowlby was another one. Yeah, Bowlby. They were. I think they must have loved Podkolzin a bit more.
But I think he was taking 12 back. He was always. They could have taken.
Bowlby went 12 right after. He literally went right after.
They could have taken him, but I think they maybe gambled that. I think the people in general, when I was talking to, thought the Wild were going to take the goalie, right? That's who they were going to go, and that Florida
and
Florida almost the whole way. When most people I talked to, especially when we got into the 10s and lower, I was hearing Florida by a lot of people in this circumstance, and that's exactly what happened. They ended up taking him at 13.
Yeah, and they would have had him.
I have to say that I'm proud that I can only do 16 pull-ups less than a first-round pick in the NHL draft.
Oh man, well I know you have to go, Anthony, but
you're going to open yourself up to Sam Bennett, Mike.
Anthony's got to go. I appreciate it, Anthony. Thanks so much for coming on. Okay.
Thanks. Take care.
Talk to you
guys.
Okay. Okay, Eck, we have to talk about the most ridiculous deal of them all, and that was the deal that was made yesterday. It was yesterday, correct? Okay. Clearly, there is a budget in Carolina, and that's not exactly a bulletin here, but that's the only thing that can justify the stupidity of Don Waddell in making the deal that where he gives up Calvin DeHaan, who. Okay, he's injured right now. He played part-time in the playoffs, but he's a good defenseman who was rather well sought after in free agency last year. And Sorella, who was a Ranger draft pick, traded in the Eric Stahl deal and had a really good season in Charlotte. I saw firsthand when he played against the Marlies. He's probably going to be an NHLer next year, either next year or the year after. And they gave up the worst goaltender in league history in Anton Forsberg and Gustav Forsling, who's a 6'7" defenseman. It was a pure salary dump. Now I don't know if it's a salary dump because Jake Bean is ready to play, or they're going to re-sign Justin Falk, or they need the extra cap space, which they don't have. They have oodles of cap space right now, but they need extra money in their budget to sign Aho. But those are the only motivations: pure, unadulterated money. And honestly,
Mike's right. You have to look at that. And you have to look at, Tony McDonald was the director of scouting. He just retired. And you have to look at another scout that just retired. And you have to look at the goalie coach that left. And all these things happen when you don't get paid to what people think they're worth.
And the crazy irony of this, the absolute worst irony of this whole thing, and I've been trying my best to give Dundon the benefit of the doubt on this because I like when people do things a different way. I like when people do stuff when people take chances on things. I'm not. It doesn't always have to be the same way. I'm not one of these hockey purists. Everybody has to have the same situation, which most people are like that in this world that we live in. But the crazy thing is that they would do this with Chicago because Chicago is there were people that when Dundon came in there, he fired Francis for doing bad trades with Chicago. I was flat out told this. He said that Francis had relationship was friends with Olczyk. And one that Eddie Olczyk's brother was on their staff too, and Chicago. There's all these things like the Darling deal and all these other trades that happened with
Teravainen.
with
Yep.
Carolina and Chicago. Dundon thought there was crazy. He couldn't believe that there was this crazy that they were in bed with Chicago, that Chicago was stealing them, was robbing them blind, basically. And I heard all this stuff about Chicago and how he was pissed off and Francis was gone because he made bad trades with Chicago. And for this, the fact that they had to send Don to Chicago was just like the kicker on it all to me. I was like, that's just insane. Like, how could that possibly be? You can't write a story like that. It's not possible.
Sure.
It was just absolutely nuts. And yeah, but Stan Bowman, gave him credit. I mean, Bowman made it happen, and
now Chicago. I mean, with a little cap flexibility that they had, and I don't think Bowman's done making deals, but they added Mata, who is not a perfect defenseman, but I think he's an upgrade over some of the guys that they have. They've added Dahan, and Dahan apparently is going to be out until November with a shoulder injury. But when all of them are back, their defense is much better, and they don't have to rush kids like Yokoharu and Boquist into the NHL if they're not ready. So they buy themselves a little bit of time, and they give Jeremy Colleton some experience on the blue line. And if you look at the way they made a second half charge last year, they lost the playoff spot in the first half. They were one of the better teams in the Western Conference in the second half.
They were, and they're going to be. They have talent. I mean, Chicago. This is a team that they are not. I mean, they have good talent. They still have some serious players there, and they have.
He's doing a good reset job here. He's
done a good reset job a couple times. I mean, this is like. I mean, Bowman has had to reset. I mean, the Blackhawks won two Stanley, or they won 3 Stanley Cups with 2 different teams, a completely different team. Like, he reset that 2010 team completely.
Yeah, and you're probably going to see them trade. I mean, there's been a lot of speculation about Anisimov. And how that they may trade him because they think Strome can move into the number 2. Well, that he took over the number 2 spot last year. And Anisimov, his contract I think is over $4 million, so they could budget there and maybe address other needs, because I think they probably need some more secondary scoring. And Anisimov isn't exactly a big scorer anymore.
Yeah.
And they moved Hayden for Quenneville. So Bowman's been busy. I mean, and I think he's going to continue to be busy because he knows that team needs to add a few pieces to. Brandon Saad could be moved as well.
It's the only way he could stay competitive. Heck, we should mention, just because I was right, really for no other reason, that Craig Berube got a 3-year extension. But you have to give Armstrong credit on this because again. He could have fallen in love with Craig Berube and given him a 5-year deal, and no one would have blinked an eye because they just won the Stanley Cup.
Right.
But he probably looked at Craig Berube's record and said, you know what? If he has a real good run here, I'll give him a 2-year extension or a 3-year extension during this contract.
And the cool thing about this, I bet Craig Berube said exactly the same thing to him.
Right.
Like, Craig Berube was probably like, I don't want a 5-year deal. Give me a 3-year deal. I'll say, I'll take less money for 3 years. You'll pay me a lot more for 5 years.
Yeah, he is that kind of guy. You're right.
And he, and because I bet Berube, as superstitious as because Berube comes from that, that Flyers world, that was in that particular Flyers era was the most superstitious hockey team I've ever been around. Like, everything about that they did had to be exactly the same all the time. And I wouldn't be surprised if Berube still wants to be announced as the interim coach of the St. Louis Blues, like he was throughout the entire Stanley Cup Finals. Like, in both buildings. In both buildings, they would announce, they announced the starting lineup, then they would announce Craig Berube as interim head coach. I'm like, you know what? I'm interim for the next 3 years. That's, if I was him, I would keep that going. But that's just how crazy Berube is about the whole thing. I bet you anything he's going to stay as interim coach. It's just because that's his. And you're right. I mean, this is what's the good thing about Armstrong and Berube. This was like an easy negotiation. I'm sure it was not like anything crazy.
Almost no negotiation.
It probably was no negotiation at all. And he said, "I'll give you. I don't want to give you 5 years." He's like, yeah, give me 3 years. You'll pay me more, and you'll pay me more year 4 and 5. I'll take it.
Right.
That's the way Berube would be about it. Man, so much to get to, so little time. All right, so Bobrovsky and Panarin as the Bob and Pan Summer 2019 tour, I'm calling it. They are now in New York, and so they started off in Florida, where they weren't supposed to meet with Florida until they weren't going to meet with Florida until Thursday, but now they're in New York and it's Tuesday.
Well, if Bobrovsky, had relatives in the KGB, they'd never heard of Instagram, because I mean, if he was trying to keep things secret, posting your ticket on Instagram and saying I'm in Florida and I'm going to New York, it sort of lets the secret out of the bag.
It feels a little negotiation-ish too. It feels like we went with because they weren't going to meet with Talon until Thursday. I mean, but they met with other people in Florida, of course, and they talked to other people down there. And the interesting side note that's going on here is there are some agents who are telling me, and different people are telling me that they believe that remember Bobrovsky and Panarin are being represented by the same guy, okay,
Right.
and they think that he is trying to sell like Bobrovsky and Panarin to Florida for like a package deal, like basically
Mhm.
okay, as an agent. So he's like, okay, so say you have $20 million to spend for these two players. All right, you would give. You would probably, if you were going to do that, you give 8 to Bob, 12 to Panarin, something like that, 11 to Panarin, 9 to Bob, somewhere there. But if he's trying to sell it as a package where they get exactly the same deal for each other, it kind of is interesting how that could play out, and how that's playing out a little bit may be not liked by both Panarin and Bobrovsky side, and you might be actually seeing a split up between the two of them that's making it more likely that they don't sign in the same place, which is sort of a weird, side story.
Well, I mean that was the dynamic with Suter and with Parise in Minnesota, and it's
arguably worth similar more. I mean, I think if you were going to look at these two players, Bobrovsky and Panarin, could you say that they're both worth $10 million?
No, I think Panarin is. Yeah, I think Panarin is clearly more valuable than Bob.
Yep.
He's going to get more if they weren't being represented. If none of this was happening, Panarin would get more than Bob on the open market, right?
I think this dual tour is helping Panarin because, as an example, I thought Panarin was pretty close to a lock with the Rangers, but then they were like, well, no, they're going to be doing this together and likely to Florida. So then I changed my mind and said, all right, he's probably 75 to Florida, 25 to the Rangers. But now that he's actually meeting with the Rangers, there's a really good chance they're going to sign Panarin no matter what number I put to it.
Yeah.
Well, is he meeting with the Rangers, or is he meeting with the Islanders, or is he meeting with both?
He's meeting with both.
He's meeting with both.
And as is both of them. Actually, Panarin and Bobrovsky are both meeting with both of them, which is curious. I mean, so Bobrovsky is actually meeting with the Rangers. Now, that doesn't seem to make any logical sense on anyone's mindset right now. But, if you're there, it's no big deal to meet with both of them, right? So,
right.
But I do think that the idea of them signing together has become very muddied, and I think the chances of them signing together is not as likely as it is unlikely. Like
what is this? I'm going to give you a scenario here.
Yeah.
Panarin signs, a 5-year, 6-year deal with the Rangers, $9.5, $10 million. What if Bob signs a 1-year deal with the Islanders, and then next year the Rangers go up to Lundqvist and say, all right, look, there's 1 year left on your deal.
Yeah.
Do you still want to be here? Because we're going to bring in Bob, and you're just going to play fewer games if you do.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting concept, and very possible. Although I think Bob is like 90% to Florida. I really do. Like I think that's how and I think Panarin is down to like the Rangers, the Rangers, Panthers, and the Islanders. And I think the Rangers and Islanders are ahead of the Panthers. And I think because honestly, the Panthers don't need Panarin. They need Bobrovsky.
They might for fans.
They might, but
the fans are bored. The fans are bored with the players they have.
I can see that. That's true. But they need help on defense. They need help. Like their offense is not bad at all in Florida, right? So that's not. But so if you're going to spend 12, to go out, you're right. I mean, but is Panarin is he going to sell tickets there? If you're already signing Bob, if you got
the Russian population there, I don't know.
But
Nobody.
Bobrovsky, I think, is actually will help them sell tickets. Like I think that there's no question there's a goalie issue there, and Bob, and they all know that there's a goalie issue there, and Bob comes in and helps them sell.
The motivation in Florida cannot be sign this guy so they sell tickets. It's sign this guy that makes you win, then you will sell tickets. The Florida fan base has proven to me, it's proven to me over the last 25 years, the only thing that they are attracted to is winning. Yeah. And that's a lot. That's the same thing with a lot of markets. So you don't go and say, well, he's a dynamic personality and he'll sell. No. The only thing you can do is make the team the best team that you can, and if they win, the people will come. And the thing is, if they sign both Bobrovsky and Panarin, then more than likely you're going to see somebody like Huberdeau get traded because they're going to need to probably, they'll be up against the cap if they do sign both of them. So they're going to have to create some space because, even if they sign both of them, I think that Florida is still a team that needs to improve.
Yeah, if they sign both of them, then they're on their way. I mean, if they sign Bobrovsky, they're on. I mean, Florida's not that far away from the rest of the division.
Well, the curious thing though is the answer about what Luongo is going to decide is
Yeah.
supposedly going to happen in the next couple of days. They've got this dilemma right now where you've got a goaltender who nobody wants at $3.4 million in James Reimer, which means probably you're going to have to buy him out. You have Luongo with the front-loaded contract, the cap for capture deal. That if he retires, then Vancouver is in deep trouble. So, I mean, there's a lot of things going on with Florida regarding their goaltenders that's going to cause problems.
Oh, yeah. No, there are for sure. I think that's going to be fascinating. Pavelski is the other one that's interesting right now because Pavelski is doing his tour as well. Meeting with Tampa. I heard meeting with the Islanders, meeting with Minnesota. What do we think? I mean, the feeling really, I still can't help but think that Pavelski is going to end up with the Sharks. It just feels too crazy. Like this would be one of the stranger things that we've ever seen. I think that if in order for this to happen, there is something much larger that we don't know about in San Jose that's driving Pavelski out of there.
The meeting with Tampa makes no sense unless he's unless he's willing to take a 1-year deal for low money to win a cup. That's the only way it makes sense. But but the problem is he's 34 right now, and if he took a 1-year deal anywhere, then he's a 35 and over contract, and he costs himself some money
for him to do. And Tampa doesn't need Pavelski in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't. There's no understanding. I mean, the only thing I can think of there is like Tampa's just doing him a favor to try to get San Jose to make a move, to say, okay, Tampa's an exciting place for him to sign, so you better get on. If he signs someplace else, there has to be some deeper story that will never come out.
Yeah, I'll give you the deep story. He may show up like in Vancouver with a bag of Lay's potato chips.
There you go.
Old Dutch.
No, Mike, you're missing the point. Don't focus on the potato chips. It's the player. Mark Messier did that.
I know.
All right, so let's talk about the Hall of Fame before we get out here, because Hall of Fame was announced today. The only lock, which we all knew about ahead of time, was Haley Wickenheiser, which is
there was no discussion about that.
She's as big as you get in women's hockey. There's no two ways about it.
Gretzky in women's hockey, really.
She really is, and thrilled for her. She's she should have her own Hall of Fame. She's all set, but then after that, it got really strange today. I thought, really strange, compared to even the people that were predicting who was going to get in there.
The only one. Let
me go through it real quick. So we have Guy Carbonneau, Jimmy Rutherford in building, which is fine.
Yep.
Right. Jerry York, Sergei Zubov, and Vaclav Nedomansky, who, for those of you who don't know, scored 20 goals for Toronto, or 50 goals for Toronto at one point, but it was the Toronto Toros. But he did have a 50-goal season with the Toronto Toros. But he's an older player, obviously. Anybody who played with the Toronto Toros would be.
Well, okay. The Zubov selection has been, in the mix for years because he had such a great career with the Rangers, with Pittsburgh, with Dallas. I mean, I think it took too long for him to get in there. Guy Carbonneau, I have a lot of respect for Guy Carbonneau as a player, but he wasn't even mentioned among the Larmers and the Rowanicks and everybody else that was. So that one's out of the.
I mean, Daniel Alfredsson's another one I just thought.
Well, I have no problem with Daniel Alfredsson never making it, but that's just me.
Make it, and Theo Fleury is another one that should make it.
Well, Alexander McGillney is better than both of them.
And McGillney,
right?
Yeah, McGillney on what he did alone for hockey, just. People don't remember the way we do. Like he was when they snuck him out of Russia, in the back of a car, in the trunk of a car. I mean, to come over here, this superstar already in Russia who had an incredible career over there already. There's no reason in the world that alone should get McGillney into the Hall of Fame. But then he also his skill was way high enough to get in the Hall of Fame. McGillney is like a freaking no-brainer. That's crazy.
I mean, I'll say this, and it's not meant to denigrate Guy Carbonneau, but if Guy Carbonneau gets in, it's sort of like Bernie Federko and Clark Gillies back in the day. If Guy Carbonneau gets in, then Curtis Joseph should get in. I mean, I think you've lowered the level a little bit.
No, but I'll throw somebody that's better than both of them right now at you, and that's Mike Richter. Mike Richter is better than Joseph or Carbonneau. Mike Richter not only won a Stanley Cup in New York, won the World Cup of Hockey with the U.S. Both of those performances, if you just watch both of those performances in of yourself, you're like, this guy is definitely a Hall of Famer. They were both unbelievable performances. I mean, that World Cup doesn't happen without Richter. Bottom line, there's no way that Stanley Cup doesn't happen without Richter. That's like there's that but again, he's and Patrick Ilias too. Like that's another one that just baffles me. Like Patrick,
Ilias could be a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean Ilias, if he did what he did for any Canadian.
No.
And won all those cups that he won. Ilias was a flat-out stud scorer, played everywhere on the ice, played every situation, could skate like the wind, won Stanley Cup after Stanley Cup, and never missed a game. Just was like completely ridiculous.
You know what the problem is? Carbonell played for Montreal, and he was a great defender too. So there's a lot of different things you could argue with him for. I mean, he's better than Dick Duff, but I mean that's not saying much.
But he also
positions, I get it.
He also stayed in the game too. Like Carbonell stayed in the game
after. Better than Clark Gillies. I get it.
A lot of people thought Doug Wilson might get it because he's been a GM.
Okay, so let's talk about Doug Wilson for just a moment because Doug Wilson should have been in like 5 to 10 years ago.
Right.
He's a guy that was in the Norris conversation every year. He won the Norris. Like, I don't know what else Doug Wilson could have done in his career would preclude him from getting in. Like,
I believe his big year, Russ, he scored 39 goals. I remember that year with Savard and Larmer. It was like early. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible why he's not in yet.
And then we also talk about Jeremy Roenick, who I think a lot of people have their mixed feelings. I mean, Roenick, I think like Fleury, like personality stuff sometimes gets in the way of what he really was as a player. But Fleury as a player was crazy good in an era where there were a lot of crazy good players. Fleury was as good. And someone else brought up another name which I think just gets ignored. So there's Roenick, and then you also have Pierre Turgeon, who had like an amazing career as well.
He did.
And people just sort of like never give Pierre Turgeon any credit whatsoever. I think
I'll tell you what, for the amount of points Roenick has at a plus 153, he should be in.
Yeah.
Turgeon, the problem is in that era, he's getting penalized for like Larry Walker playing with Colorado Rockies. Same thing. Everybody's like, well, it was that era, and who cares about his 150-point seasons, whatever he had? They don't care.
Did he do 130 points with the Islanders?
Yes.
Turgeon? I mean, just like that's like the leading scorer all time for the Islanders.
Player. He was an offensive player, but a tremendous offensive player.
Yeah, like just nuts. And
I actually think he's hurt by the fact that he played for as many teams as he did. Because remember, it was Buffalo, Islanders, Montreal, St. Louis. I think Dallas was in there as well. I think he played for 5 teams, maybe 6. I mean, that's usually a player of his stature, the former #1 overall pick, doesn't move around as many times as
he did. Play for 6 teams. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one did I miss?
1,300 points. He's more than a point a game.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, how do you put Bernie Federko in and you don't put Turgeon in? Like, that's just stupid.
Hey, I was at the draft that Pierre Turgeon was drafted. It was in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, he had one 58 goal season. He had 2 40-goal seasons. He had 2 38-goal seasons. Like, come on.
Maybe I'm misremembering that. I thought it was in Buffalo. Yeah. Anyway.
No, I think to me, the whole thing, I just think that
he's won a Lady Bing, if that matters.
I mean, the argument will be made by everybody when they're listening to our conversations that we're talking about a lot of great players, but not Hall of Fame players. And then the whole discussion of like, okay, what defines a Hall of Famer? And if that's the case, then maybe there isn't anybody but Haley Wickenheiser in this one, this go around, which is, possible. But I think that so much of what we've seen, so much of the Hall of Fame is there's a Canadian bias to it. There's a Canadian team bias to it. There's a bias to it for staying in certain places. I mean, because there's no question that, and Ilias is a perfect example.
Let's go through this one second. I think you'll like this.
Yeah.
So the Hart Trophy voting for 92-93. Mario Lemieux's #1, 160 points. Okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Doug Gilmour's 2, 127 points. I get it. He did a lot of things. Pat LaFontaine is 3rd, 148 points. Adam Oates is 4th, 142 points. Turgeon is 5th, 132 points. And Solani is 6th with 132 points.
And that was his rookie year.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. I mean, look at the amount of points are being put. And then this year we have, like everybody thought this year, for crying out loud, we get Kucherov who puts 120 points on the board, and that's like the craziest thing ever. So, and it is because we haven't seen those kind of numbers forever. So
here's the weird thing. I wish there were transparency in 92, 93, because I want to know who the schmuck was that gave Mario Lemieux 1 second place vote. Who the hell was that?
Yeah, this is in the years before Twitter, man. When you could get away with anything, you could hide anything you wanted. You know what I mean? There's no question about it. I think so. So this is it's a tough thing, but I think guys that really need more consideration in my mind: Fleury, Richter, Turgeon, those, and McGillney. McGillney
is such a no-brainer.
Is such a no-brainer. It's crazy. People forget how good McGillney was, and also how good he was before he played in the NHL. Like the KLM line in Lariano, McGillney, and
no. It was Bure, Fedorov, and McGillney.
I'm thinking I'm combining the two big Russian lines. Sorry, there's Bure, Fedorov, and McGillney. That line just was ridiculous, right? And they all went to the NHL. Like Bure is in the Hall of Fame, isn't he? Fedorov's in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
So I mean, McGillney was the first one to get to the NHL, right? So
because he defected.
Right? And that opened the door for so many other Russians. I mean, that should be taken into account in this whole thing.
Well, and I'm a fan of international hockey, and I do believe that players like Yakushev last year should be honored. I have to look. I mean, honestly, I've known that Nemansky only from, I think he was with Detroit, Russ, and it was clearly when he was over the hill, because it was him and guys like Milan Novi, who played for the Capitals, who came to the NHL in their 30s and really didn't have any kind of impact at all. I'll have to look at his international record of what he scored, because on right now, off the top of my head, I don't understand this pick, but I'll have to look and see what he did and justify him being elected to the Hall of Fame.
This is the crazy part. So McGillney isn't just a little over a point a game. He's 1,032 points in 990 games. And with the Jersey Devils, at the age of 31, he had 83 points. At the age of 31.
Right. In an era where no one was scoring at all.
Right.
I mean,
that was the Lab era
team that played no offense. That a Devils team that sent one guy in and completely, that invented the trap and basically killed hockey for a decade. That Devils team.
Yep.
So, the year he scored 33 with Toronto, he had a 20.0 shooting percentage.
Right.
And that's not even his highest.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, and he played that bum. He was forced to play that bum Matt Sundin.
A couple quick questions from the chat room. I did mention today that Panarin, there was a rumor that the Flyers were going to touch base with Panarin while he was in New York. And I obviously think that's a long shot to get him.
I think you put him on hold if they called.
I get they definitely do want to be in the discussion for all this stuff. Like they wanted to be in the discussion for Tavares, but it doesn't seem like they will be.
All right, so
Tavares.
There are some questions that
the Flyers wanted to sign Tavares.
Oh, you mean last? I thought you were talking about.
But they couldn't get it.
Sorry.
There are some questions.
Signs there either. I'm just saying that there is a rumor out there that they're trying to talk to him.
There are some questions here that should get answered. I'm going to go with Kristen McCarthy's first. He said, Russ, is there more to why Wade Allison hasn't been signed? There is. So Wade Allison told us today that 17 months after his knee surgery, he's still in a fair amount of pain for his knee. He only played at about 50% last year in college hockey for Western Michigan. So that's why.
Okay.
But this kid's got guts, and I really hope his knee gets better because I really like the kid. A lot of people asked me last year, Eck, how he was doing, and I saw a game, and I knew he was slow. And I never said anything. I wouldn't report on him at all last year. Now that I found this out, I even told Allison I withheld it, and he thanked me because it's like, you know what? That's why sometimes we don't report stuff because I knew he had knee surgery, and I figured he was probably still recovering.
Yeah.
So you have to be fair, It's like so that's part of being fair, I think. Anyhow, ghost trade. There's really no news about a ghost trade. I think that's dying. I do.
It's. I think what the Flyers are waiting on that. I don't think it's dying. I think the Flyers have decided. Fletcher is very calculated in the way he does things. We're finding that out. But I think he's decided that he's going to let the dust clear on some other guy, on some of the UFAs. Basically let Gardner go somewhere. See where Zaitsev ends up in a trade. See, see where these other, because I also think that there's no question that Tyson Barrie will be traded.
Yeah.
Where that so he can sit back and wait with Ghost and then wait for the team that really needs him. I think that's his thinking on that, and because there's no reason to rush a Ghost trade to happen right now unless someone just comes in and blows him away with the trade. But I say the Flyers are going to move a defenseman. It's going to be that's
Robert Hagg. That's what I think it's going to be.
But I hear that they really like the fact that Hagg has more of a defensive hitting style that they need, and that I think is something that.
But they got a guy, Adam Getting, who drafted in maybe 2 more years is that guy.
Yeah, but this is not a 2 more year team right now. In my opinion, the way they're looking at this thing, they're looking at this like they've got a window this year and next year. Whether or not you believe that or not, that's how they're acting in their things that they're doing.
Well, I don't know if there are any Leaf questions in the chat, Russ, but I just okay. Go ahead.
The first one is: would you pay Dion Phaneuf $700,000? Okay.
Yes,
that's what I thought. The second one is from Jerkball. He's asking me, and then I'll let Mike comment. Russ, are you going to address the picks the Leafs took? All I will say is their OHL bias is strong. Mike?
Yeah, there's definitely a tendency. Definitely a tendency to stick close to home. The kid that they drafted in the second round, Nick Robertson from Peterborough, they're one of their prospects, SDA, Simeon Gushentev, if I'm probably butchering that, but he played there. They scouted him heavily. They were very interested. But I commented to you, Russ, and we talked to somebody who's rather knowledgeable about the scouting situation, that the Leafs are drafting the same players over and over. It's skill, it's speed, it's lack of size. And they don't care about the size. They care about the hockey IQ and the speed and the skill over size. And I think that's fine, but you also have to have players with size too. Now, one thing we're going to hear a lot of stuff over the next few days. I just love the spin that's coming out of the Marner camp that's being funneled through their sort of mouthpieces in the media when it comes to the offer sheet scenario. And Dubas talked about this on Saturday when we were asking questions about the Marner situation, about other things. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but I believe it was McKenzie and Drager both mentioned that Kapanen and Janssen are basically agreed to deals. The problem is, the thing is they haven't announced them yet, because once you announce them, then it counts against the cap. They're keeping their powder dry when it comes to Marner, because they want to make sure they don't know where, how much it's going to cost them for Marner. And Dubas even said Marner, in so many words, is preventing them from doing other business. And at a certain point, now, Darren Ferris doesn't care about that, but the Leafs do. So if they miss out on opportunities to improve their defense because Mitch Marner is dragging his feet for an extra $500,000 a year, that doesn't help the Leafs in the long term. So I think Dubas at a certain point is going to say, okay, well, you know what, we want you back. We want you back badly, but you have to do something here to get this done in a timely fashion. Otherwise, it hurts us in the long term.
And remember, the Flyers aren't doing this. Aren't doing the same thing for Provorov, which people are ripping them about. Like the Flyers aren't basically saying we're not going to do anything until we figure out Provorov's contract.
Right.
They're out there, but they're out there still making moves and stuff like that.
Well,
to the point we're sitting there and saying that really hurts their chances of signing Provorov, perhaps. But you can't sit back and wait for players. They've tried with Provorov for a long time to get more of a commitment to where they want to be. And the issue they've had with Provorov, from what I've been told, is they're getting really nothing back. They're getting okay. They're basically waiting for McAvoy and Werenski to sign, and there's Provorov is not throwing anything really out.
And everybody supposedly is waiting for Marner to sign, Rantanen and Point and everybody else.
Yeah,
and that's the problem, because this should be getting done, and instead it's dragging, and I don't think it's going to be good for anybody, either side.
I will tell you this also, and I forget who asked it, but somebody asked why didn't Columbus trade guys right at the draft? You have to have a team interested in doing that to be able to make that trade. And Yarmo, I was standing right next to him when he was addressing the media on the draft floor, and he worked the phones. Like, he did all that he could. It just wasn't there.
And I want to throw this out there too. It is not impossible that still happens. and that they trade the rights in a way that they can get, from what I've been told, like there's a way of like a sign and trade situation with Columbus that could still occur. Not rights, but a sign and trade. Where
Yeah.
to give the 8th year, to somebody.
Washed out wants the percentage that I would give Bowen Byram to make the NHL this year. I actually think it's about 30-40%. I think Moritz Seider will make the NHL this year. I think he's the one defenseman that does.
Huh, okay, interesting. Yeah,
Sure.
you were right on that. A few people who got that. Everybody was shocked by that, and you rested.
No, we weren't. Like, if people
weren't,
listen, I think you did, Ek. If they listened to the pregame show that we did on the draft floor on Sirius, we both said that Seider was going to be in the top 10.
Yeah,
we did.
Yeah. And Russ said as far back as the combine that Seider was going to be in the NHL. Also, and the thing is, with Detroit's defense, as bad as it is, that just increases the possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then finally, some people asking us if we've seen the Jillian Fisher videos and stuff like that. Yeah, we're really proud of Jillian Fisher here at Hockey Buzz. Like we are, and in the HockeyBuzzcast particularly, because Jillian's got her start with us. This is the first thing she ever did hockey related was on our podcast and doing videos like that. And I gave her some tips on how to do some YouTubers she needed to follow, and she learned very quickly. Jillian's a really quick learner, and she's we're thrilled to see all the stuff that's come her way. So I talked to her the other night after she was on the draft and everything like that, and she was just blown away. She's like, I can't believe this is happening. It's really cool. And I'm like,
I slid into her DMs a few times, told her I thought
she's earned it all. So it's really cool. She's a great person, and we've spent a lot of time with her, and it just she worked incredibly hard. So that's like the thing you have to remember. It is a lot.
People don't realize she spends hours and hours and hours on these videos. They don't just you can't make a video in 10 minutes.
And she spends thousands of dollars traveling around. She's connecting with going to all different kinds of NHL events. I mean, I remember she was at the World Cup of Hockey with us, walking around. In Toronto, Mike came up one day. Remember we all walked around with Jillian.
I remember the bubble hockey game where
bubble hockey at the World Cup. I was
the only person that ever played bubble hockey wearing dress pants.
Right, human giant bubble hockey thing. Yeah, so Jillian's great. We're really happy for her. We're gonna have her on. I told her we're gonna have her on eventually when everything mellows out here after after UFA and all that stuff. She's gonna come back. We're gonna talk to her about everything that she's done and all that stuff. So we'll have a lot of fun with that. For sure, she'll be back. All right, that's all the time we have for today, guys. We'll be back again tomorrow. Please remember you can support this show if you get anything out of it. If it helps you through your day at all, we'd really appreciate going to patreon.com/hockey. And putting in any little bits you can help donate to the cause here. It all helps us a ton. Thanks, guys. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow. I have to stop the show. I'm in charge. Talk to you tomorrow.